Thank you, Chairman Adolph. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm sure you're familiar with the Pew research that had been announced last year where they talked about the number of voters around the country. They said approximately 24 million, 1 in every 8 voter registrations in the United States were not valid or they were significantly inaccurate, and that there were more than 1.8 million deceased individuals that were listed as voters and approximately 2.75 million that had registrations in more than one state. I'm sure you're familiar with that. When it occurred last year, early in the year, some of my questions are related to the SURE system maintenance and the interaction with the counties. Title 25, Chapter 19 requires that the counties maintain the accuracy of the SURE system through a voter removal program. Counties are required to at least use change of address information supplied by the U.S. Postal Service, but may also visit the addresses of voters in person or mail notices. Additionally, a voter removal program must be conducted once per year, not later than 90 days prior to a general or municipal election. And my question is, do you have any data regarding how many counties are complying with that requirement?
We are following those requirements, and to our knowledge, most counties are adhering to those specific directives. We at the Department of State, though, are concerned about voter list accuracy and have begun to look. We began last year to look at the SURE system and the list of voters. And one of the things that we discovered almost immediately was that there were 56,000 registered voters in Pennsylvania who did not have signatures anywhere in their voter registration record in the SURE system. We notified the counties that they needed to have signatures. It's both a state law and a federal law. You have to have a signature. And many of the counties addressed this. Either the signatures were already in their files and they just didn't put it in the SURE system, or they contacted the voters and got a signature. We're down to about 28,000 now, but it's important that piece be addressed. We're also looking at the number of voters who are applicants for voting status in Pennsylvania. When you apply to vote, you have to provide your name, your date of birth, and your social security number, and it's supposed to be a three-way match. And we looked at sometimes people transpose numbers, or they misspell a name, or they use a nickname instead of a proper name. There are lots of issues. I'm sure you can imagine way more than I. But when we looked at it, there is the capacity in the system to manually override information that doesn't get a three-way match. And we looked at that number, and there were 168,000 in Pennsylvania that did not have a three-way match. And that's an issue for us going forward. Similarly, we are looking at the SURE system regularly. We're supposed to do a duplicate check within the SURE system. Is there any person in Pennsylvania who's registered in more than one place in Pennsylvania? And we're doing that, and address the need for counties to contact people who are registered in more than one county. And for the first time, we are going to enter voluntarily the program, the cross-check program, nationally. This is done privately, and it's done by the state of Kansas. It is at no cost to the state of Pennsylvania. We ship our voter ID list to Kansas, and they cross-check. There are 25 participating states. This will be the first year that the Pennsylvania has been a part of this cross-check. I think New Jersey is also doing it with us this year. 2 years ago, there were 23 states in the cross-check, and they start the computer process in January, and we'll probably get the results sometime mid to late March. They did the cross-check in December of, I think, in January of 2012, and there were 5 million voters registered in more than one state. So we'll get that list from this cross-check and share it with our counties. We have in place the process because we do it for Pennsylvania already. If you're registered to vote in more than one county, sometimes that happens. If you're registered, you're contacted by the county whose registration is oldest, and they send you a letter and ask you if you would like to maintain your registration in your first county, and if you say, no, I've moved to the second county, it's done automatically. This will be the same process. Voters will be contacted and asked if they would like to maintain their voting status in Pennsylvania, would rather transfer their voting status to their new home in another state.
And you said most counties are complying with Chapter 19. Do you have a list of those counties that are not complying?
Some counties sometimes don't do the update, and it's because of financial constraints, and it's the cost of postage and the amount of numbers, and we do have that.
Do you have that you could share with the membership?
We can get you the list. I don't want to put people, and it's not every year. Sometimes it just depends on how it's a cost item for counties.
And what's the department's options when they find that the county's not meeting? I mean, do you have a process in place to deal with that situation? What are your options to deal with that?
No, we notify the county, and we recommend that they go forward with the process.
Do you notify the election bureau in the county, or do you notify the commissioners or the executives of the county?
I'm sure what goes to the election bureau goes to the county commissioners.
Okay.
Having been a county commissioner, if we got a letter from the Department of State, I paid attention.
A quick question that might just
let me go through, because you mentioned deceased voters.
Right.
One of the highlights of what we've been doing over the last 2 years, we began a close working relationship with the Department of Health because of the Gosnell issue. And while we were doing that, we said, look, we need to find a smoother way to address deceased voters in Pennsylvania. And we now get updates once a month. And if there is a death certificate filed in Pennsylvania, we have that, we get that from the Department of Health within a month, and we address it. The issue still becomes if there is no record of the person who has died being a Pennsylvania resident, and if they die in Arizona, and we don't know that they're a Pennsylvania resident, that still becomes an issue. I do want to say one other issue that surprised me. When you register to vote, the first question they ask you on your registration is, are you a U.S. citizen? So you check the box. We are working with the Administrative Office of the Courts because apparently people come in and seek to be excused from jury duty because they are not U.S. citizens, yet there is a registration with the box checked that says they are U.S. So either you are or you aren't. And we're working with the Administrative Office of the Courts for that.
Now, we've had legislation that's been advanced through the Senate to deal with electronic voter registration, and we have had legislation introduced in the House. Does the department have a position on the electronic voter registration legislation that we're considering?
This goes back, yes, we are looking at it. The issue always goes back to signatures and how you can get an accurate signature for purposes, because it's both federal and state law. The other maybe confusing point is that when people register to vote, whether they register online or they register on paper, their information goes to voter services in the county where they wish to register. And that county does the verification, the name, the birthday, the social security number. If they don't match, they're supposed to contact the voter and say, gee, would you check this information and verify that it is true and correct? And oftentimes, there's just mistakes that happen. Sometimes that happens, and then sometimes we do counties do the manual override. I don't know if many of you remember, but in 2008, there was an attempt to do an online voter registration here in Pennsylvania. Did you remember that? The Department of State put up a site, and you could fill in your voter registration. It looks exactly like the one, the paper form. And you type in your information, but they couldn't quite get the signature piece right. So it was a two-step process. You would press the submit button, and your information would go to the county to be a registered voter, but then you had to print the form and sign your name and send a hard copy. A lot of people just pressed the submit button and thought they were done. And they never did the print and send the signature. And
Is that why we ended up with all of those registrations that didn't have signatures?
It wasn't up long enough to cause that many. It was only up for about a month, maybe 2 months. We can get you the exact on that. The other issue that is kind of interesting, the system could be spammed. So you can do, you know how you do electronic registrations, and we now have the technology. You know, when the little squiggly lines at the bottom, sometimes they have squiggly 4s and 5s, and you have to copy it. That technology can be applied to keep the number of fraudulent or the number spamming would be eliminated. Finally, the issue for that system was the ability of the system to be hacked. And when they discovered that the system could be hacked, not only could information be added and subtracted, it could also be altered. So this was in 2008, and they took the system down. I think it's possible. If you look at motor voter, how long have we had motor voter? A long time. The difference, it's different in 3 fundamental ways. First of all, the information is verified at PennDOT. PennDOT will not issue a driver's license unless you have a correct name, date of birth, and social security number. So that comes through motor voter. Similarly, PennDOT has a signature, and they won't let it go forward without a signature. And then the system that PennDOT has to communicate between the PennDOT facility and voter services in the counties is a secure system. That's fundamentally the challenge you have as legislators, to develop a system that will work.
Again, my final point, Mr. Chairman, if I may, related to the lobbying disclosure law fee increase regulations. Last year in May, there was proposed regulations that would have increased the fee from $200 to $700, which was a 250% increase. I joined with Chairman Cohen and the rest of the members of the committee and sent a letter to the department with our concerns about that. We thought that the fee at $700 was excessive, 250% increase especially. My understanding was that that fee was being reduced possibly to the $400 range, which still doubling a registration fee is still a huge increase, and was curious what department's stand was on that now, where you were at with that. And
Representative Metcalfe, I came from county government where we look at things like this. When I looked at the lobbying disclosure fee, it costs us $800,000 a year, maybe 8.5, sometimes a little less, but it's always right in that $800,000 variety. We were charging $50 a year for lobbyists to register. So we have about 3,000 lobbyists, so we were getting $150,000 from lobbyists, and the taxpayers of Pennsylvania were footing the bill for the last $650,000. So I said, we need to kind of level the playing field here a little, and we were able to get an adjustment up to a fee of $100 per year per lobbyist. So that means we get 300, still the same 3,000 lobbyists, we get $300,000. So now as we sit here today, the taxpayers of Pennsylvania are underwriting $500,000 of the cost to run the Lobbying Disclosure Act. We looked at every way that we could possibly reduce the cost of doing the administrative work to manage lobbying disclosure, and we have affected efficiencies, but we're still way over. And if we go to a $200 a year thing, the amount the taxpayers will be underwriting lobbying disclosure will be down to $200,000 a year. The intent is to level the playing field.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Adolph.